Hey, what's up, guys? Note Investor here. How is everyone doing on this crazy day? Did you guys see that Walton coin got smacked on a tweet? Did you guys see Z Classic today? Holy smokes. I know some of you guys were in it. I hope it was worth the fork. Holy crap. But we'll take a look at some of those wild charts. The story of the day. There's always a story of the day. Every day is a story of the day. But the chart of the day is probably Z Classic. But right now we're looking at Bitcoin. This is the 1 day chart, the daily chart of Bitcoin. And I'll go through this. You can see the line I've got drawn. That's the neckline of the inverted head and shoulders pattern that everyone's looking at, that we're all watching. But, near term, it's kind of struggling a little bit to go higher. So let me see. I'm going to stick to Coinigy today. So I'm going to close out most of these other pages here, and we'll go through some of the top charts. I'm going to go for about maybe an hour tops, and then we'll go from there. But I'll certainly leave time for you guys throw out some names and some charts you want me to look at. But what I also want to do is I want to use this, or not the whole time, just a little bit, as a little bit of my time to do some training on how I use RSI for my chart reading and for trading and for investing and all that fun stuff. So I know not everybody trades, and some of you guys are just purely hodlers and investors, but I think this will also help you with timing and just kind of looking for the extremes. So I'm seeing some comments here. I'm guessing everybody can see my screen okay, and I'm hoping y'all can hear me just fine. And unless you guys say otherwise, I'm going to move ahead. And so let's take a quick look at the overall market. So going to coin market cap, you can see dominance on BTC is up to 40%. And so it continues to climb. Let me go down here. And we've seen this. And, the market right now feels very similar to what we saw during the September, October timeframes. Thank you guys for confirming there on the volume and the chart. And so I'm going to run through some of that comparison. And, right now it's mostly the BTC show for the last couple of days. And if you guys were around during that September, October timeframe, the alts just were not keeping up. I mean, there was always an alt pump, and even now there's always alts that are doing pretty good, but they were mostly just quick trades, and for the most part it was Bitcoin. And so feels similar, but right now you can see the dominance here in the last couple of days has continued to climb on BTC. We're back to 40% now, with Ethereum at almost 19%, Bitcoin Cash just under 5%, then Litecoin, Ripple still at 8%. And then everyone else just kind of single digits down at the lows, 1%, and then all other alts at 20%, and that's off the highs from around 25% that we saw earlier in the year. So that's just interesting. And how high could this BTC dominance go? I think it could go higher. I mean, it's not going to go, in my opinion, back up to what we saw back here, right, where it was 80s and all that. Will it go back up to 65 like we saw at the peak there in December? I don't think so, not in this run, but we could see a little bit more upside. We could see mid 40s or something, maybe even 50. And so that's what I'd be looking at. And so what does that mean? It means right now it's probably, if you got to be in place, for now, the trend has been being Bitcoin overall, but I'm looking at a lot of alts that are trying to put in some lows. They're trying to put in these bottoming patterns. And so we'll look at a few of those that I've got on my mind. And there's always a few alts that are just really setting up. I was talking about Omise Go, and I'm looking at a handful of others that are looking pretty good here. So let's take a look at Bitcoin first, and then we'll go through some of my other charts here. So first, the daily chart. And this is the big head and shoulders pattern that many people are talking about, and rightly so, right? It's certainly a valid pattern. And you can see the right shoulder is this most recent dip here down over the last couple of days through the weekend that brought back to the support area around 9,300 bucks, and that's where we saw some pretty good bouncing here. Now we've rallied right back to 11K. We like almost to the penny touched 11K yesterday overnight, and then just sold right off from there. And that just happens to be the neckline of this pattern. So it kind of makes sense that there was a little bit of resistance there, some pausing. The good news is it's still living above the key moving average. Now we want to see that hold here. And let me zoom in a little bit here. So we saw the pullback, and I'm going to cycle through a couple of different exchanges. I mean, the pattern's all around the same, but it does vary a little bit depending on the exchange, the volume especially. But so we pulled back, we tested right around 10.3, 10.4, and that was looking pretty good. That was the area of support I wanted to see hold. But there's always a but. So let me show you. We can see that we rallied, tested, and we saw some pretty good action coming in. But here in the last couple of hours, it's starting to pull in a little bit here. And how that's translating is this is turning into a little bit of a reversal bar on the 4-hour. And I don't like that. And so, you know, you don't want to see that, especially after these two support bars down here at the lows. This green bar didn't have as much volume as I wanted to on the buy side. And then it finally broke through. It looked pretty good here. Went up to 10.7, but it's just totally selling off and reversing. So what I'm watching here, and this maybe plays out over the course of this stream, is this 10.4, 10.3 area. If we undercut that, then the next level to be looking at is this support down in this area. So the 10.1, give or take, that may be the next area that is tested. Now, how that translates on the daily chart, I mean, that's still going to be just fine on the daily, especially if it's not crazy volume. You know, we'll just see a little bit of a pullback, and then maybe we find that support around 10K, and then finally, hopefully, break through this neckline. And if that happens, that was the big move that we're talking about here as far as the measured move projection out of this pattern. If we can break out above the neckline at 11K, then that projects out to north of 16K, just shy of 17, which happens to be the same prior peak here. So that would make sense that we would see a massive rally if this pattern plays out. Now, will it go straight there? Absolutely not. We all know it's going to ebb and flow. There's going to be the shakeouts along the way. Nothing ever goes straight up or straight down. But what I would expect to see is if we see something like that, you know, you'd probably break out, maybe hit this next resistance point around, you know, mid 12K range, see some pulling in, some back testing a little bit, maybe back down to the 11s, the low 11s, and then we could break out above that and kind of just go from there, right? So that's how I would expect it to play out if we saw that pattern play out. But first, we got to see that breakout. Otherwise, this could just form into a different type of pattern if it continues to go sideways here and builds a little bit of a base. Could still have the same effect, but right now we're watching this pattern. And the longer it plays out, if this shoulder just starts really to drift down, it's going to really start to invalidate that. And so we want to see that happen here in the next, you know, 3, maybe 4 days tops. Otherwise, I'll be looking for another type of pattern. And you could see a different type of pattern here, which is real similar, but it's a complex head and shoulder pattern where you've got 2 shoulders, and then you got the head. You could see maybe 2 shoulders form here, right? That's also possible. We see a pullback down to this support area again to the mid 9K range, and then the breakouts. And so that's a possibility. And so you kind of always wanted to be looking ahead when you're looking at charts and thinking, okay, what potential could be happening here, and try to put the odds in your favor and go from there. So that's what I'm looking at near term on BTC. I'm still bullish in the intermediate and longer term. Just near term, I mean, there's just a lot of volatility in this market by nature. We've had this huge run up off the lows, and we're pulling in a little bit. So we just got to take it one day at a time and see how it goes from there. But that's what we're looking at in terms of the support levels on Bitcoin. And so let's go back to the coin market cap. So $450 billion basically. So not too bad, but the alts are just not keeping up. I mean, just look at the red across the board. And when we start looking at some of these charts, you'll see that for the most part, the trend is still down. There's not a whole lot keeping up versus BTC. There are a few standouts that are looking strong, but I mean, if you just go down the list, it's just not the story that most of you guys want to hear. It's not been the alt party that we're expecting, but hey, we're still in February, ladies and gentlemen. It's not even March yet, so I think March is going to be good for alts, but we'll see. Let's go. So let's look at some of the charts of the day. Z Classic. We got to take a look at Z Classic first. So for those of you that aren't familiar, there was a fork that was linked to Z Classic, and we were watching to see how this would have played out. And just look at that daily chart. I mean, there was the massive run up late last year, and then it really tightened up. And I got to say, this part of the chart was looking very nice, very attractive setup. And then it had the breakout, but then that just fizzled out and just really started to roll over. And if you look at the 1 minute chart, I mean, this whole bar was literally that 1 minute chart almost. I mean, exactly as soon as the block count for the fork happened, it was just dumped. And let me go to that here real quick, because I was watching that earlier. It was incredible to see that thing happen like that. There it is. So this is the 1 minute chart, and you can see here we went down 83% in a minute, and it was just crazy action. There was no buyers in sight, and there was an amazing bounce though. If you were able to catch this trade, I mean, just look at this bounce here. I mean, 260% off of the lows, but then after that, it's just kind of been going sideways and meandering. And so incredible action, kind of expected though. I mean, everybody was, I think, playing the same game there and thinking, I'm going to hold to the fork, and as soon as the fork happens, I'm going to dump this thing. And that's just the way the markets are. If there's no buyers, then that's what happens. And so you saw this massive bounce. And I think most of the buyers here at the lows were mostly just buying to play the bounce here. But there hasn't been much of a bounce after that. It's just kind of sitting tight. And for all intents and purposes, it sounds like it's going to be a dead project going forward. So probably not a long-term hodl, in my opinion. And so Z Classic, another one here. Walton on the WTC here. They were running a contest, a giveaway contest, and there was a tweet that went out from one of the interns talking about how they were the winners. And, people were just taking that as it was rigged, that it was a scam. It just, you're seeing this thing dump here pretty hard here in the last couple of hours. But Walton's taking a little bit of a smackdown. You can see at the lows. I mean, that was an extreme smack, 30% off the lows. And here it's bouncing a little bit, but it's still not looking healthy. If you go to the 4-hour charts, massive volume. We'll see if that was just a fear panic selling, and it looks okay there. But just such a sensitive news driven market right now, and just little things like that. The daily chart, obviously it's not that bad, but that near-term chart on Walton just took a pretty good hit there. So all right, so those are the two crazy charts of the day. Let's go through some of the other alts that I am watching. First off, Omise Go. And let me see here. So Omise Go, I was talking about on the daily chart, this really nice cup and handle pattern that's been forming versus BTC. And so you can see what I'm looking at here. After the big run up we had, late last year, it's just been really nice pause consolidation. And then it put this little bit of a handle here. Now it's an upward facing handle, but what I really liked is this volume down here on the accumulation on the right side of this pattern. As it really started to tighten up, seeing a lot of buy volume coming in, which is really nice. And once it broke out, the volume was there to confirm. Now we want the breakout to hold, because it's certainly possible that it's a failed breakout. I mean, in this market with alts kind of under pressure, absolutely it could be a failed breakout. You always have to factor that in. So what I'm looking at is kind of take a little bit more of a granular look here. We are seeing some selling here today, but if you look at this recent action on the selling, volume is starting to dry up a little bit on the sell side. And so that's good. That's normal, healthy pullback action. You don't want to see a major volume break. And it's not unusual to see these test the breakout point. So you see these breakout, then they pull back a little bit. As long as it's constructive and the volume is not extreme on the sell side, then you could see a little bit of a bounce and then a takeoff from there. And so I'm liking this one for a little bit more of a intermediate term. Now, obviously, when I'm trading these, I'm going to still maintain some stops. And so there's going to be a point in the chart where if it continues lower, I'll just get out of the way and wait for another setup. I do hold this one longer term, so I'm going to be holding it either way, unless things get really crazy. But this is just one of the one of the stronger names. I mean, when you look at most of the charts for alts versus BTC, I mean, this one is very strong and has been holding up relatively well. Compare that to some of the other names, right? That well, not Z Classic, but EOS. EOS is actually one I like here, trying to put a low in. But if you look at the bigger picture, right, since the start of the year, it's been on this downtrend. And Omisego is just one of those that has been bucking that trend for the most part. So that's why it was kind of on my radar. It's looking good. And you want to find those names that are showing good relative strength and trying to hold their own. And so Omisego is still looking pretty good, but I'm watching near term how this reacts and how low it dips here on this recent selling. So let me see here. Another one that I was looking at was Monero. And so Monero BTC continues to tighten up here, and it's not I don't see any buy signals yet, but I'm keeping it on my radar, and I'm watching this pattern get real narrow here in the last couple of days and weeks. I'm watching this versus USD. It looks real similar to BTC because this pattern is, for the most part, going sideways. So as BTC goes up, this one goes up and vice versa. But could we see an outperformance on Monero versus BTC? So if you go zoom out, take the big picture look. Let me go to a different exchange here. On Bittrex, this is the weekly chart of Monero. Now, pretty rarely do I check out the weeklies, but when they're tightening up like that, I try to take a big picture look. And so this one's actually looking pretty interesting on the weekly, kind of putting in a little tight flag right here, holding this 10 EMA on the weekly. And so longer term, I got to keep an eye on this one. And on the daily chart, I'm going to certainly be watching to see if it can break out above that upper resistance line that it's been forming. Now, the USD pair of this chart is, it's not too bad here. Again, the volume patterns are pretty constructive. You can see a lot more green bars showing up on the last few days and red. And so as long as that continues to form that way, I'm going to be watching this one as a potential breakout candidate. So got to keep an eye on Monero. Another one that I'm watching here is Binance Coin. And so if you go to BNB versus BTC, and let me find it on my list here. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit, but here's the daily chart first, kind of the big picture look on Binance. And you can see it's had that big pullback from its peak earlier this year. And here in recent days, it's trying to rally, wedging up a little bit, but it's trying to rally. And now finally getting above this 10 EMA, but the volume is really good here too. Now, if I zoom in here on the 4-hour, it looks very nice. I mean, just this rally, this crazy volume coming in, it just tightening up here, getting very narrow. On the hourlies, also looking very good. And so this one's very near the top of my list in terms of alts that I'm looking to trade versus BTC. And so Binance Coin's looking pretty good. The USD chart of this one also looks pretty good. See here on the daily, just kind of forming this little bit of a cup right now, but good volume patterns all around. So there's a few out there that are holding up, but there's not a lot across the board, right? It's not huge. Cardano is one that is pulling in, continues to pull in. I keep looking at this one as a potential low. And so this is a good segue into my RSI discussion that I want to talk about here. But, again, long-term lows coming in, but starting to show some divergence here. EOS, Cardano, there's a few names that are starting to put that in. And so let me go into that, and then I will go into some of the charts that you guys want to look at. So what is RSI? So for those of you that are relatively new to technical analysis or kind of looking at the charts, you'll notice I always have this line down here at the bottom of my charts, and that is the RSI, the relative strength index. And this is on a 14 period. So if I'm looking at the daily, it's 14 days. If I'm looking at the 4-hour, it's 14 4-hour bars. And what it measures is the velocity or the change of price, because it compares the last 14 price against each other. And it tends to oscillate between two extremes. Now, you can never go lower than 100 and never go higher than, or never go lower than 0 and never go higher than 100 on this RSI. Traditionally, RSI, from a stock perspective or whatever, they will use it for what they call quote unquote overbought and oversold indicators. And generally speaking, when it breaks above 70, it tends to be considered overbought, and below 30 is oversold. Now, RSI by itself is not a buy or sell signal, meaning if it breaks below 30, doesn't mean you sell, you buy automatically, and vice versa. If it's shooting above 70, you don't go sell it, right? It's just it's an indicator. And if you guys have taken my course, you guys know how I do technical analysis. Price and volume action comes first, always. Then you go down the list of indicators. For me, it's moving averages next. And then after that, I will look at RSI, and then I will look at, MACD or Fibs, or however you guys want to look at it, right? Everybody does something different. Bollinger Bands, Ichimoku clouds, on and on and on. But the indicators are always secondary, right? They're kind of the validators of what you're seeing on the price and the volume action. So that's RSI, right? It kind of tends to move between the two, but it comes in very handy when you start seeing these extremes, right? When it hits these crazy lows, because they're in any markets, cryptos, stocks, commodities, whatever, there always is a reversion to the mean. And so things don't live at the extremes for too long. And so when you see something bounce, or when you see something really take a hit, and here's a good example, right? There was this big sell-off here. It was kind of, let me find my drawing tool here. It was marching its way down, and then it really accelerated down. And you can see the RSI just hit these really extreme levels down at the lows, and they don't stay there for very long. This RSI hit 13, and sure enough, you see a pretty decent bounce. And that bounce was 46%, right? So that's a massive bounce in just basically a day and a half or so. And so you tend to see those, and they come in handy when you're trading to look at the extremes. Now, I use RSI for one, to point out those extremes, and two, for divergences. And so what do I mean by RSI divergence? So this is a good example of an RSI divergence. And so here's the price action, right? You can see there's this point here right around that 360 mark, 3060. And then you can see here it's lower. So the price is going lower. But if you look at the RSI, it's the opposite, right? That's what we call a bullish divergence, meaning the price has gone lower, but the RSI has not gone as low as it did during that first low. And so the reason that's handy is because the RSI tends to signal the momentum and the rate of change of the price. So basically that tells me, hey, start paying attention, because the selling here, the downside speed is starting to get tired, right? And you see this on the upside. So I'll show you guys an example of the same thing on the upside. And so this is telling me that, hey, maybe the selling is getting a little tired here, and we're going to start to form a little bit of a low. Doesn't always happen, but you start looking for those clues. And so you're seeing some bullish divergence on the RSI, and you can use this on different time frames, right? So like when I'm making an entry, oftentimes I'll look at the 5-minute chart, and I'll look for those big divergences on the RSI on the 5 minutes, and that'll give me a good timing perspective in terms of when to get into a specific trade, right? Other than just the price action. So that's RSI. That's how I use it. And you can use it basically on the other end if you're looking to do selling. So let's go to BTC. Yesterday was a pretty good example of divergence on Bitcoin. And so then I'll just wrap up there and end my training session here with you guys, and then we'll get back to the charts. But it's always good to kind of show you guys my thought process and what I'm looking at when I'm watching these charts, because they really help in terms of trying to pinpoint some of the price changes. And so here is BTC. You can see top there, top here, right? And so you see these big points in the price. But if you start looking at the RSI, these last two tops had a bearish divergence on the RSI, meaning this last little leg up that we saw yesterday, it was running out of steam, right? Look at the RSI here, didn't confirm. I mean, the first one here went as high as 76, and this latest one only got to 66. And so it was not confirming, and sure enough, we saw it follow through on the price and volume action with the sell-off. So what you do is, you don't necessarily sell, but you start getting really cautious, right? And so you could either raise your stop, or you can start paying attention to the chart or anticipating a correction, right? I mean, it just lets you know that, hey, maybe we're going to see some sort of pausing. And if you're looking to buy and you're seeing this thing break out and you're looking at the RSI divergence, me, I try to just sit on my hands because I'm hoping to get that extra dip. And sure enough, you're seeing that dip now. I saw the same thing happen a couple of weeks ago when we first ran up to 11.8. And that was kind of my signal to start getting out of the way near the top. And you can see that happen there as this thing ran up. And sure enough, once I saw the big volume reversal show up here with on the 4-hour chart with some very good volume, that was my signal to start getting out of the way there. And so that's how I look at it, guys. I mean, there's, it comes in handy. It's never 100%, of course not. Nothing is, but you put the odds in your favor when you start using the tools that are available to you guys. And so these are nice. RSI comes in real handy, and it's one of my most commonly used indicators. So when you see this on the charts, you'll know what it is now. All right, let's get to it. So BK giving crypto lessons on CNBC Fast Money. I need to tune out and go get his crypto lessons because I think he told me to buy it Ripple at $3, and I missed that trade. I should have really bought Ripple at $3 when he told me. But honestly though, guys, I'm kind of happy that CNBC is doing crypto stuff, right? It's just kind of broadening the adoption, helping people understand at least, hey, there's this other market out there, even if they're wrong. But I mean, to be fair, right? CNBC, I mean, they're a media company, right? I mean, I hope you guys don't take stock tips from them either, right? So they're gonna be wrong about a lot of things, and they're there for the eyeballs. I mean, they're gonna talk about what's hot, and so they're gonna try. They're trying, but you got to remember they're a media company, and they're not. I mean, they're smart people. There's a lot of smart people on there, but they're probably not trading day to day as much as they are worried about ratings. So anyway, let's get going here. So another round of some chart reviews. So BTC again, as I mentioned at the start of this, if you missed the first part of this, we saw the pullback happen. The 10.3, 10.4 was the level I was looking at. I was holding, and we saw it break out above that here just a few hours ago. But this 4-hour bar is really reversing. I don't like the way it's looking, so starting to get cautious here. Maybe we see a little bit of a test of this lower 10K area again. So keep an eye on that. Most alts are just not keeping up with BTC for the most part. They're just, they're just lagging badly on the upside. And then when Bitcoin takes a hit, they take an even harder hit. So it's unfortunate. If you're hodling the alts, I'm sure you're feeling the pain, and it's been that way for the last couple of months. But let's get through some of the big names here. Let me go through CoinMarketCap. I'm going to hit some of the big names, and then I will take a look at some of the other ones. So we talked Bitcoin. We haven't looked at Ethereum. Let's go ETH first. So I will go to ETH on GDAX. So first off, ETH BTC. Now, ETH BTC was one of those that I was looking at as a potential bottoming pattern here. So we had that big pullback, started to get pretty extreme on the RSI, hit 28, and then we rallied, but we rallied right into that key moving average. And here we are pulling back over the last couple of days. Now, I mentioned this in my last video. We could see a higher low, which maybe that's what we're seeing now. That would be good, as it would start to shift the trend, and a confirmation would be getting above this prior high here from 3 days ago. Or we could see some further downside and then create a double bottom. And I would actually prefer that personally, because here's what I would expect. A double bottom which undercuts this first low and then starts to rally there. But if we see a double bottom undercut, watch this RSI, right? RSI probably won't come as low as it did the first time. And if you make a double bottom with the bullish divergence on the RSI, that just makes for a much stronger pattern there. So I'd be watching that. So personally, I'm kind of almost hoping for a little bit more of a dip on ETH versus BTC, and then some volume to start coming in on that second leg up. But for now, it's trying to form a little bit of a higher low here. If you go to the 4-hour chart, you can see we had a pretty decent pullback, and now we're trying to form. So if we start to see some more upside, then that may be it on the Ethereum BTC side, and hopefully we start outperforming Bitcoin on that end. USD pair, I mean, it's pretty much going to be following suit with Bitcoin, just not as strong to the upside. And right now it's rolling over and breaking down a little bit here as Bitcoin is selling off. Ripple. Oh man, what's Ripple at? 91 cents. Let's talk. I was actually talking to somebody earlier about Ripple, and they don't watch the crypto markets as much as most of us probably do. And they were asking me, so how is Ripple? Because they were buying Ripple near the highs, unfortunately. And I told them, yeah, Ripple took a pretty good hit. I hate to tell you this, but it's down near the lows right now, under a buck. And so let's take a look at the Ripple. I'll go to Bitfinex on this one here. So Ripple BTC. And a lot of these alts, you guys are going to get the picture here, is very much the same story. They've kind of had this long hit, and they're starting to near these oversold conditions. But I think Ripple could go lower. And what I'm looking at on Ripple, let me go to a different exchange here that has more history. Look at this. This is, I don't want to laugh because it's probably not funny, but this is very interesting. So if you guys were around when Ripple did its thing back in April of last year, April, May, and this big run up ahead, it had this huge run, and then it came down and it started to form this pattern that finally gave way and really sold off. And here in the last couple of weeks, I mean, we're almost forming the identical pattern at almost the exactly same horizontal price point versus BTC. And so it's just real interesting to see that exact pattern show up. And let me highlight what I'm showing you guys here. And I just noticed it the other day when I was doing some scanning, and I was like, oh man, that's kind of interesting. Does it repeat? Are we going to see the breakdown of this descending triangle? Odds favor we will. So I would be very cautious if I was holding Ripple. I mean, you don't buy anything that looks like a sailboat. No, that's not a sailboat. That's two sharks. You guys got to be careful there. So, but anyway, that's a very interesting descending triangle pattern we're seeing repeat itself on Ripple BTC pair. And so right now it's right at that support area. And in fact, it's kind of breaking down a little bit. So I'd be cautious here. The RSI still has room to go on the downside before it hits extreme lows. And so we could see some more selling on Ripple. The sailboats, USD pair, just very much still in the overall downtrend. You can see since the highs around $3, just hasn't really recovered. And, just hitting these little, has had a pretty good bounce. And even off the lows, I mean, I traded this rally and had a pretty good trade on this, but just longer term, not turning the corner yet. Yeah, that's my patented dual shark pattern. All right, so we'll go through, I'm going to just cover the top 10 in terms of charts, and then I'll skip through and we'll cherry pick some of these others, okay? So Bitcoin Cash. So looking at the BCH here on Bitfinex, I'll do the BTC pair first here. Just not holding up as much as we would have thought here, but breaking down off of support. And I was looking at this support area. I was thinking maybe that's the area it bounces off of. And so far, no bounce. Bitcoin Cash continues to sell off, and RSI's, kind of getting down at the lows, but not crazy extreme yet, but it's starting to reach there on the near term, however. And a lot of these charts are doing that. You're seeing these 4-hour charts where the RSI is dipping down into the 20s. And so near term, so many of these are feeling a little bit washed out. So we could definitely see some bouncing, and the bounces could be strong, right? You can get 10, maybe 20% bounces on some of these names. And so you got to watch those if you're trading those, because they could be some pretty good oversold bounces in the near term. This is the 4-hour chart, but you can see just the selling has been pretty intense versus BTC. It's just most of these alts are just not keeping up. If you look at the USD chart, right, it's kind of drifting lower, and there's big volume showing up here on the sell side. So Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin. So Litecoin also a little bit of a double top on that 4-hour chart. Not too excited about that. So what I'm watching is this pattern there, and it's right at the support line, guys. It's like testing it right now. And if it breaks, then you can most likely see a retest of this zone down in here. And that would give another, 5 to 8% or so versus BTC on the downside. Now, it is getting a little bit oversold, starting to get there as well. So I'd be watching that on the daily chart. Has room to go, unfortunately. So we could see some more selling here versus BTC on Litecoin. If you look at the USD charts, what I'd be looking for is if we see some reversal, I'd be watching for a little bit of a break of this zone here. So from here, you're talking, that 220 area. If it starts to get above that with some volume coming in, that'll be positive. The good news is the selling here hasn't been too intense from a volume perspective. So maybe it's a little bit of a dip. We make a higher low and then we break out if and when Bitcoin breaks out. So definitely don't keep it, don't lose track of this one, but it's not looking as strong right now. Okay, so we'll do NEO and Cardano. Man, if Cardano rallies off the lows, they're going to overtake NEO again on the number 6 spot. So NEO. So there is the airdrop, and some of that is driving, the buying pressure on NEO. Will it be enough to hold it? Personally, I don't think it's going to be a big driver, right? There was some of this, but it wasn't a huge spike, not like we saw in Z Classic or anything like that. But we are seeing some profit taking for sure showing up on NEO here near the highs. And so you got to be cautious on that. The trend is starting to turn a little bit. On the USD pair, though, it looks fine. I mean, big picture is not that bad. If you look at the daily chart, still above the moving averages. Volume's not too bad, but I'd be watching that 120 area. If it starts to break below that 120 area, then we can see a retest of the low 100 area. And so that's what I'd be watching for. There was definitely a lot of profit taking near that 140 mark on NEO. But longer term, still like the project. I think it's a great project. If you look at the big picture versus BTC, it actually looks pretty good. I mean, it had that huge rally, and it's just kind of consolidating here near the tops versus Bitcoin. So all around, it's not too bad. We already talked Cardano, and so I'll just very briefly cover it. Again, the bullish divergence on the RSI, I'm paying attention to that. We may be near the lows. The other thing to notice on Cardano is it's retraced the whole move following the breakout from this base here. And so it's right back to that little bit of a zone. And so I'd be watching to see if some support shows up here in and around this area. And the fact that it's so oversold near term, I mean, the RSI hit 23. Here it is making it lower low, but RSI is not as low on the daily. And so from a very long-term perspective, this is making a pretty big low point here. And so if you like the project, you start paying attention to it here, because versus BTC, we could finally see some sort of reversal of this trend. And so I'm watching Cardano. This is definitely on the watch list in terms of a bottoming action there. Stellar Lumens. All right, let's go take a look at Lumens. Lumens, I think, just needs a little bit more time still. Can't remember, Lumens had that massive run late last year. We went up almost 1,000%. And since then, I mean, it feels like forever, and it is in the crypto world, but it's only been 2 months, right, since we've had this time to consolidate. It's finally starting to reach some low levels on the RSI, and so many of these names needed that. I mean, look at the RSI where it was here. It was up there near 95, just way extreme, and now it's almost at the opposite end. So I got to keep an eye on this one. But right now, unfortunately, it's kind of in no man's land here in terms of the technicals, because there's not a lot of support here. This was a very rapid rise on the daily chart. And so it's kind of anyone's guess where it decides to hold here. It's not like it's nearing a period of consolidation like we saw back here. And that just tends to create a stronger support. And we don't have that here. So for now, just got to watch the price volume action. There's just not a lot of upside yet. But looking at the 4-hour chart, seeing that same pattern show up in so many of these names, bullish divergence on the RSI, starting to find a low point. So that's just gets on my radar when I start seeing those things on a lot of these names. All right, let's see here. We'll do EOS and IOTA. So we kind of covered EOS, or maybe not. Did I cover EOS? I've been talking EOS so much. Talking EOS with somebody else earlier. But EOS, again, this is the same thing I was looking at here. Massive divergence on this RSI, starting to build some momentum. And of these charts, EOS is probably the top of my list, only because I like the volume price action that we're seeing here. And excuse me, guys, I gotta all right, had to clear my throat there. I was about to cough right into the mic. You guys didn't want to hear that. what I was looking at here is the price volume action here in the last couple of days. So a lot of green showing up here near the lows, starting to find some accumulation showing up. It's going sideways here. And so got to start paying attention to EOS. On the daily, however, still living below that moving average. So that's going to really be the test. Can we get back above this 10 EMA on the daily? And it's trying, and it's tried a few times here, but got to keep an eye on it. Looking pretty good near, longer term, from a longer term hodl perspective, meaning month plus. I'd be paying attention here and looking at that, especially because it's, how far is this off the highs now? This is 40% off the highs, not too bad. Didn't quite pull in as much versus BTC compared to some of those other names that are down 50 to 60, 70% from the high. So take a freak off from Node. You guys are funny. Actually, hold on, let me take a swig of my coffee here too while we're at it. And don't worry, it's not spiked. It's not spiked coffee. It's way too early in the day for spiked coffee. Oh, actually, no, it's not. It's never too early in the day for spiked coffee. All right, so EOS, looking at that. Some other ones here. There it is. EOS USD, I wanted to show you guys. So same thing here, putting in a little bit of a higher low. All right, we had that. Obviously, that was with Bitcoin. So got to start paying attention to this here as it's tightening up. And if it starts to break out here, that'll correspond with the low that we're seeing on the BTC chart. And so you can see that pattern is just really starting to tighten. So like an EOS here, paying attention to it. IOTA. There it is. So looking at IOTA, let me go to the USD chart of IOTA first. And so these are putting in a similar pattern, a lot of these names where there's a very clear support resistance area, right? So IOTA had this big pullback, bounce, sold off along with the rest of the market, rallied, and here it is, just kind of a little bit of an equilibrium pattern that's forming here on the USD chart. But I'm really liking some of the accumulation we're seeing here on the right side. Now versus BTC, now it's always the question, right? Should you trade your Bitcoin for some altcoins? The level I'd be watching is just this downtrend resistance. It's getting really long. I mean, this consolidation is just drifting lower, but got to watch that. Now, that's a big percent move to the upside, right? If you go from here up, that's 20%. So that's a big move, but that would be a big shift in terms of the momentum longer term on this chart versus BTC. Maybe we'll start to see that. We're starting to see some accumulation here in the 4-hour chart versus Bitcoin. So you've seen these big spikes, some of these pullbacks, another big spike with volume. And so this one's actually looking pretty good. It's trying to form a low here. And what I'm looking at specifically is this, right? You see that action there with the volume. It has these little bit tiny pullbacks here. So if it can stay above this level here, this may be a good secondary entry near the lows. And got to pay attention to IOTAs. And a lot of these are starting to do a similar pattern. So not too bad there. Let me cherry pick a couple more of these. We covered Monero. Tron. Did you guys see Tron? Little spike here today. I don't know if I trust Tron enough to go buy it, but had that little spike. All right, who bought Tron? I want to know. One of you guys bought $1 million worth of Tron. Let's see here. VeChain. Yeah, I'll cover VeChain here. Let me scroll through the list. We already covered Omise Go. Digix DAO has been very interesting here as of late. And so you look at that, I mean, just another one of those kind of bucking the trend big time versus BTC, and just continues to rally here. Unfortunately, I missed this one, and I was watching it, and it was just kind of on my radar last couple of days, but just has never, I wasn't doing a whole lot of trading this weekend as I was kind of getting my next private group ready. But here yesterday, I was watching this and just never jumped on it on that pullback. But this one just continues to look very strong. And what I'd like to see here is it's forming this little bit of a almost V-shaped, but it's definitely a cup, and see how it acts as it gets near the highs here. And maybe we get a little bit of a handle, a little bit of a pullback, and set up another breakout from there. But one of the stronger names as of late. I mean, off this low here, just 140% already. Not bad. Let's go back to BTC here. Sounds like BTC's taking a little bit of a hit. That's what I was cautioning on that 4-hour reversal we were seeing here. So undercutting the lows of earlier today, and so that's a pretty significant break of support there, guys, just because it's really going to start to shift the momentum in the near term. And so next levels to watch are that low 10K area. Let's do a fib on this here real quick. So from the rally there, we go point to point. We just undercut that 382 level. It was holding earlier today. 10K, 10-1 is kind of the next little zone that I'd be looking for if this thing continues lower. And so kind of that little window in and around there. All right, let's see here. Digix DAO, we covered that. Man, a lot of red on the board. Populous, wow, Populous is taking a hit. One of you guys mentioned that earlier. I hadn't noticed it earlier today. Walton still taking a smackdown. Z Classic, nobody wants to talk about that anymore. All right, let's go through some of your names then. All right, so we've got let's say about 15-20 minutes, and we'll go ahead and wrap it up. So I will go quickly and move through your guys' wonderful names. So let's go here. So we want Icon. We'll do ICX, VeChain, Verge, Digibyte. Okay. QuantStamp. Walton. Now, we talked Walton earlier. Walton is getting smacked. Stratus. Yeah, let's take a look at that. I haven't looked at Stratus for a little bit, but Walton's just getting a big hit here, guys. There was a tweet and went out. There's some FUD and other things going on, but you know, it's already been in this long downtrend that's just really starting to accelerate now with some of that selling. But hey, maybe it's a good bounce play. Still seeing a lot of volume show up, but look how extreme that is here at the lows. 23 on the RSI. So, okay, cool. Let's go through some of these names here. All right, first off, ICX. At ICX BTC here. I'm going to zoom out first. I'm going to start at the daily chart here. Just continues to drift lower. Unfortunately, the level I was looking at a few weeks ago was kind of this little zone that it was trying to hold here. And it's still kind of in there, but that was that big base. Some support really showed up here, but just has not followed through and just drifting lower. Definitely not keeping up with BTC on this latest rally. And if we zoom in a little bit here and start looking at some of the near-term levels, we go to the 4-hour chart. Again, similar to the others, not as extreme, but similar to the others, there is a slight bullish divergence showing up on this one as well. And so let's look for a reversal of the low. If you can get an undercut like how we're doing now, a new low, but then it starts to really reverse with volume coming in and the RSI is higher, then those tend to be, in my opinion, those are pretty good entry points as far as kind of holding it for a little bit of a trade or something. That's how I look for those. Something like this, right? If we see a double bottom with this type of volume on the upside, then it really starts to look a lot better. So for now, I say you just got to wait it out and wait for those signals to start showing up on ICX. Longer term, I like the project. I think it's one to definitely keep an eye on for 2018. But near term, I mean, it just had that huge run. It's just been pulling in with most alts over the last month and a half. But I'm watching it for those signs of a bottom there. Verge. And Verge is well off the highs. How far has this thing come? I'm going to go peak to peak here. 73% off the highs. It's pretty significant. And unfortunately, there is no signs of this bottoming out just yet. It looked like it was trying here a couple of weeks ago. This was one of the early movers off the lows once Bitcoin found its low. And this one had a very nice rally. And I thought, oh, here we go. Verge is really breaking the downtrend. But that just really fizzled out. That was surprising because the volume there was pretty massive compared to the last couple of weeks. But just really still going lower here. Now, if we zoom in and look at the near-term picture, here's the 4-hour chart. And just not looking strong, guys. I mean, Verge is just really weak. It is oversold. It's definitely starting to get a little washed out. So most of these names that are just that extreme could bounce here. But overall, the pattern is just not that strong. I mean, there's no real clean technical pattern here other than just some counter trend rallies you're seeing on the bounces. VeChain. But looking at VeChain, also seeing a pretty steep sell-off here in the last couple of days. If you go to the daily chart here, this was forming a pretty nice little bit of a cup here, but just really breaking trend right now. So I'd be very cautious here, starting to break support and starting to accelerate. Volumes coming in. RSI is at 38, 39. Has room to go on the downside if it wants to continue lower. So the next level I'd be looking at on VeChain is kind of this little zone around there where we found that prior support on that first that last base near the top, and that's another 15% or so, 12 to 15% on the downside. Keep in mind this one had a massive rally. I mean, thousands of percents up, and in the big picture, right, we're just right now undercutting this 382 level on the fib level. Could it go lower? Yeah, it could go maybe down to the next level after a big move like that. It's not unusual to see them kind of retrace that, and that would be another 20 to 30% from here. So got to be cautious on this one, guys. Just the big volume breaks, I don't like to see those. You got to pay attention when you see those big volume reversals. And right now, it looks like it wants to go lower. Let's do Wabi. Man, Wabi is it's like $63 million market cap now. It's just really down near the lows. It was trying to bottom out earlier a little bit today, but I'm looking at this one as a potential low. $60 million market cap on Wabi. And is it the low? Is it the low? I mean, it's pretty much retraced this entire move. Just a crazy, I mean, it's undercut the 786 level. Just pretty much retraced that whole move right near the lows. Definitely oversold in the near term. Was trying to rally today, but just continues to face resistance on the upside. The big level to watch in the near term is if it tries to rally, can it get above this little area that broke down first? And if it can, then I'd be looking at that next level as a potential resistance point. So this one, first level is up about 7%. Next level up is about 22% from here. So, but for now, just not looking good on Wabi. Stratis BTC. I was hopeful on this one. It was looking like this is what I was looking at first, right? I saw this break, a little bit of a double top type of pattern. It really broke down, but it started to rally and to see it recapture on the BTC side. And that's, look at where it failed, almost exactly to that point. And so when these things happen, when they break down like that, it's not uncommon to see a bounce. And that's where you got to pay attention, is what was prior support area, once it breaks, tends to be the next resistance zone. And so you're seeing that's basically what's happening now. On the downside, it's basically above another resistance area. So are we going to pause here? We've got another maybe 5 to 7% to go, and you really want to see this level hold. That would make sense. Let's do a measured move on that double top. Maybe we have reached the bottom. Maybe. Let me fix my arrow there so as not to skew things. But yeah, you do a measured move on that, and that takes you down to around here. Now, they don't usually always go exactly to the point, so it makes sense. Maybe that's the area that we see Stratis start fighting some support versus BTC. But for now, just not quite ready yet. This is the daily chart of Stratis. Let's go to the 4-hour. Seeing a little volume, little bit of buying action coming here near the lows, but no upside confirmation yet. Take a look at QuantStamp, QSP. Car Vertical. I haven't done enough research on that one, unfortunately. I'll have to look at that, but I don't have an educated opinion to give you on that one. So let's see here. QuantStamp, again, a little bit lower volume name, so definitely choppier on the charts here. This is the daily. This was on my radar. I haven't taken a position on it, but just watching this one here to see if we can find a low. Just since it debuted, it's just kind of been selling off. Had that pretty good rally, late last year. Kind of got on everyone's radar during that rally, and that was pretty decent. I mean, that was, a couple 100%. But since then, it's just kind of really fizzled out. And so not sure what to make of that here yet. The project's interesting, kind of just validating some of the smart contracts and some of all that stuff that if we start to see more of that, there's going to be a market for that. But for now, the chart doesn't look very strong. The daily chart is certainly below all support levels and breaking down, and just not a lot of buying showing up yet. So is it oversold near term? Yeah, a little bit, but just not ready yet either. So many of these alts, unfortunately, are just Chaincoin. So many of these alts are just looking like that. Let's see here. We got a few more minutes. Let's keep going. Basic attention. I want to look at that one. Now, I do like this project long term. They're doing some interesting things, especially tied to the Brave browser and all of that, and getting on, I believe, is it Twitch that they're getting on, or one of those other platforms. And so could we see some upside from basic attention because of that? I think we could. And the people, the team behind this is a pretty good, solid team there. So I'd be watching this one. This is actually a really good project. Now, longer term, I think it's good. Near term, how low does it go before it finally turns around? So many of these alts are looking this way. RSI still has a little bit more room to go on the downside, and the trend is still very much down, right? I mean, you could, until we break this trend, you want to just be very cautious on names like this. And I mean, it doesn't take a lot, right? Maybe a 7 to 10% pop to the upside to start to shift things around. But for now, you just got to wait these out. You're starting to see some volume coming in here on some of this near-term action, but it's definitely not strong yet. So I'd be waiting it out for now. Quantum. Oh, Quantum. I was watching this one to see if it could finally break above this little horizontal resistance. Just never could after that nice rally had late last year. So far, just continues to lag versus BTC. It's just not ready yet. So if we go to Quantum USD, you can see just, off the low, had that rally, but just so far, kind of just teetering out a little bit here. Still living below this 10 EMA every time it tries to rally above on the USD pair. Just met with a lot of selling and resistance along the way. And so got to wait on this one for now. Just not ready yet, in my opinion. So there's the 4-hour charts. I saw this big pop here a couple of days ago, and I was thinking maybe that's it. Maybe it's ready. The volume was certainly there, but it has certainly just fizzled out. So unless we see another similar type move, just got to wait on this one. But this one is also putting a big divergence on the RSI, similar to some of the other names that I'm watching. So maybe it's getting close to the lows there. Let's see here. Let's see here. Yeah, that's a good idea. I will recap BTC for those of you that are joining late and before I wrap it up. Let's see here. I'm just catching up on some of these comments, guys. Advanced HODL Technology 3.0. I like that. Oh, man. All right. I'm going to do, I'll do NEO and Lunar, and then we'll wrap it up. I'll do some recap on BTC. Yeah, Dow Jones and Nikkei. I wanted to talk about that, guys. Well, maybe not. Actually, I meant to talk about that during my RSI educational moment because I was seeing a similar pattern on the RSI in some of the bigger exchanges on the stock side. I do some stock trading still, but not a ton relative to crypto. It's mostly been crypto these days, but I certainly took some short positions on the market as it was diverging near the second top. It looks like a big double top, in my opinion. Let's see here. What did I say I was going to cover? See, you guys confused me. I think I said NEO, but I'm not doing NEO because I did NEO already. I'll do 10X. Sorry. Confused me there. Let's see here. I'll do Chaincoin. No, I won't. Let's see. So yeah, unfortunately 10X. And I mentioned this a while back, guys, just with some of the regulation and the crackdown and these token cards, unfortunately, I think are going to face a lot of headwinds in terms of being able to be used, right? And I think they're a great idea just because it's going to help with some of the adoption. And 10x is probably my favorite of the projects out there, these token card type projects. But man, it's just really been weak. It had that nice counter trend rally late last year, gave you a pretty good trade, and it looked like maybe that was it. But so far, it's just really fizzling out. Now, near term or longer term, just very oversold. So I think this one's getting ready to find a low. Maybe we see another similar type of counter trend rally like we saw in December. And if you like the project, you start paying attention to it here because it's near the lows, big time. Washed out on almost all levels. If you look at daily, if you look at the RSI on the 4 hour, I mean, I would almost bet by this time next week, 10x will be probably higher, or you'll have seen a little bit of a rally just because when it starts doing this, there's always a reversion to the mean. This is really accelerated down fast here recently. So I think you'll see a low here in the near future, a little bit of a bounce, but is it the bounce? Is it the low that turns things around? It's way too early to tell. And honestly, the daily chart just doesn't look good yet. Excuse me. Populous. I don't know if there was any news or anything that is driving this. It's definitely washed out in the near term. I think it's hitting a low point here and just really low on the RSI here. That's 16, man. That's way down there on the 4 hour. On the daily chart, has really seen a big pullback. I don't know what drove that. I'm not as familiar with this project. And it was a big popular high fly here a couple weeks ago, but 75% off the highs here through February. So I've seen a big pullback. Definitely due for a bounce, but not a strong looking chart for sure. Ooh, BitConnect. No. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I hate to cut it short, but I have to, unfortunately, and I'm going to go back to BTC, rehash some of those price points that I'm looking at. If you missed the early part of the stream, some of the names I did cover, I went through the top 10 on the market cap list through IOTA. I covered Monero, and we kind of cherry picked some of the other names. OmiseGO, Digix DAO, Binance Coin was one that I'm really liking here, the way it's setting up. And so some of these others. So if you missed that, take a look at some of that. But let me go back to the charts and talk BTC before we get going here. There was not a mention of Dragon Chain, so I apologize for that. Dragon Chain, I'm going to have to cover that one next time. I know you guys have asked me about that one here in the past. I am still holding some Dragon Chain. Not a lot, but I'm holding some. But let's see here. So BTC, first the good, first the bad. Just to recap, what we're watching here on the daily chart, the big picture, is this inverted head and shoulder patterns that's been forming. And currently we got the right shoulder forming. I mentioned we could see a complex pattern, which is 2 shoulders. Maybe we see a little bit of a dip there. Otherwise, look for a breakout above that 11K, 11.1 mark. And that would really start to confirm this pattern. And we could see some acceleration there. But you're going to want to be watching the volume. Now, in the near term, following the selling we saw yesterday, I was watching first the 10.4 area for my first level of support. That was right around there. We bounced around, held it. Then it looked like we were going to start rallying, and we saw some pretty good action coming in, but it really started to reverse. And when I saw this reversal, and now it's playing out, and I mentioned this at the start of the stream, is it looks like it's a big reversal candle on the 4 hour. And so I mentioned at the beginning, if it undercuts this 10.3, 10.4 area, I'd be looking out for a retest of the low 10K area. So looks like that's playing out. That's what we're watching here. Below that, again, if it continues lower than 10K, then that's the next big support area to be watching. And that was really where we got the momentum going following the weekend. So do I think it'll come back that far? Probably not, but hey, it could, and it could form that second shoulder on the right side there. So maybe we see 10K or just under that, but below that, around 9,800 is the strong level that I'd be wanting to see this hold. And so that's it on BTC. Again, overall, BTC seems to be the place to be heavier weight Bitcoin versus alts until those alts really start to confirm that they've made a low. And near term, could see some more selling on the Bitcoin side, but intermediate term, longer term, I'm still bullish. I'm liking the way this pattern's playing out. So we got to pay attention to that. Unless we undercut this second low, so far it's looking pretty good in the big picture. So that's going to be it for today, guys. Appreciate everybody having here. If you don't already, please subscribe to the channel and smash that like button, ladies and gentlemen. Till next time, take care, everyone.